Turning awareness outward. 9 ways of cultivating the Tao. Cultivating harmony. Before heaven and earth were formed, all things were undifferentiated and united with the Tao. Then the clear and the muddy separated. The clear formed the sky, and the muddy formed the earth. The 4 seasons came into being, and yin and yang emerged. From the pure essence of the vapor of the Tao, humans were formed. From the mundane energy, insects came into being. As hardness and softness interacted, the world of myriad things proliferated. Essence and spirit belong to heaven. Bones and joints belong to earth. Essence and spirit fly up to the celestial realm, and bones and joints form the roots and foundation beneath. The sage follows the ways of both heaven and earth. He is neither influenced by social fads nor seduced by conformity. Heaven is his father, earth is his mother, and the principle of yin and yang is his guide. He lives in harmony with the 4 seasons. His clarity is like the stillness of heaven, and his inner peace is like the stability of earth. Those who stray from the way of the Tao will die, but those who follow it will live. The spirit of those who cultivate stillness is bright, for the Tao lives in minds that are empty and free of desire. This is why it is said, the 1 gives birth to 2, the 2 gives birth to 3, and the 3 gives birth to the 10,000 myriad things. All things come from the interaction of yin and yang, and the one primordial breath of life always moves toward harmony. Therefore, it is important to cultivate harmony. Cultivating the spirit. Humanity owes its existence to transformations in heaven and on earth. The human form is conceived in the 1st month. In the 2nd month, the shell of the fetus emerges. In the 3rd month, the skin is formed. In the 4th month, the fetus begins to take on a shape. In the 5th month, the tendons are formed. In the 6th month, the bones begin to grow. In the 7th month, the bodily form is complete. In the 8th month, the fetus begins to move. In the 9th month, it tumbles around in the womb. In the 10th month, it is born. When the baby is born, it possesses the complete form of a human. The 5 viscera constitute the internal form. The lungs are linked to the nose, the kidneys to the ears, the heart to the tongue, and the liver to the eyes. We are identified by our external features, but the real identity lies within. The head is round like the sky. The feet plant squarely on the ground like the earth. Just as the universe has 4 seasons, 5 elements, and 9 stars, and the year has 360 days, humans have 4 limbs, 5 viscera, 9 orifices, and 360 joints. In nature we find wind, rain, cold, and heat. In humans we find happiness and anger. The gallbladder is the clouds. The lungs are the vapor, the spleen is the wind, the kidneys are the lightning, and the liver is the thunder. The human body mirrors the macrocosm of heaven and earth. In humans, the heart directs all activities. The eyes and the ears are the sun and the moon. The blood and the generative energy are the wind and the rain. When the sun and the moon deviate from their orbits, light will vanish and there will be eclipses. When wind and rain do not come at the appropriate time, there will be disasters. When the 5 elements do not follow their cycle of creation, all living things will suffer. Heaven and earth are great and can nourish all things. However, they need to maintain their balance by not overextending their energy. In the same way, our eyes and ears cannot work without rest. We cannot expect our generative energy and spirit to remain strong if we do not conserve them. The sage knows the value of life and therefore cultivates the spirit in order not to lose the essence and energy of life. Cultivating the energy. The energy in the blood is the essence of life, and the 5 viscera are containers holding this essence. When the energy in the blood is secure within and does not leak out, the heart is open and desires are at a minimum. When desires are minimal, the eyes can see clearly and the ears can hear clearly. When the 5 viscera are in harmony with the heart, awareness is clear and not cluttered. You will be able to listen and hear everything, and to look and see everything. No harm will come to you, for the bad vapors will not be able to penetrate you. However, if you ask too much, you will get little. If you try to see too much, you will end up knowing little. Generative energy and spirit are lost through the orifices of the body. Vital energy and intention follow the 5 viscera. When the ears and the eyes are attracted by sound and sight, the 5 viscera will be shaken, energy in the blood will be churned up, and the spirit will sway and not be focused. Fortune and misfortune are not always accidental. The sage knows how to avoid them. She is dedicated to clearing her ears and eyes of attachments so that she will not be enticed. Her emotions are tamed, her disposition is peaceful, and she has few desires. Internally, the 5 viscera function properly. Her spirit is gathered and her body is not strained by physical exertion. Her gaze is directed away from worldly affairs, and she responds only to what affects her immediately. Those who are greedy for knowledge end up learning the least. The spirit should not roam far, otherwise desires will arise. With the arousal of desire, the 5 colors will confuse the eyes and obstruct seeing. The 5 notes of the Chinese pentatonic scale will enter the ears and obstruct hearing. The 5 flavors will confuse the tongue and obstruct the sense of taste. When the consciousness is scattered, original nature will stray. If you have too many desires, the breath of life will be weak. If there is too much hatred, the heart will be strained. People do not live out their full years because they are too attached to material things. Only those who can live in emptiness and inaction can attain health and longevity. The ways of heaven and earth follow natural cycles. All things in heaven and on earth come from the Tao. If you know the Tao, there is nothing that you will not know. If you don't know the Tao, you will know nothing. The Tao, which is the one, leads to the two. When 2 things interact, another entity is born. Therefore, life is not a big event, and death is not the end of all things. You should not be repulsed by ugliness and attracted to the precious. Know your limit and be at peace with it. Do not revel in extremes, or you will lose happiness easily. Fluctuations of sadness and happiness destroy virtue. Hatred tires the heart. Attraction and desire are deviations from the Tao. Life comes from the movement of heaven, and death comes with decay and dissolution. In stillness, you should be in union with yin and virtue. In action, you should be in tune with yang and movement. Consciousness is never separated from the body. Spiritual energy is the treasure of consciousness. When the body labors too much, it becomes injured. When you think too much, the spirit becomes exhausted. The sage lives in accordance with the times and is satisfied with his place in the world. He responds to activity in emptiness, therefore he can see far and understand the rationale of things. He uses emptiness to hold the full, understands moderation, and is quiet in his speech. Thus he lives his life to its fullest. Nothing bothers him because he is attached to nothing. He embraces virtue, cultivates harmony, follows the way of heaven, and is in stride with the Tao. He does not place fortune or calamity first because he knows that the matters of life and death do not alter his existence. His spirit guides his actions. Therefore, whatever he does, he succeeds. Cultivating right action. If you don't place a lot of importance on worldly matters, your spirit will not be tired. If you don't think too much about material things, you will not be confused. If you can let go of life and death, your intention will not be led astray. If you can merge with changes in heaven and on earth, your clarity will not be diminished. The enlightened ones stand firm, whether or not they are supported by others. Because they learn from teachers who are timeless, they can penetrate and understand everything. Knowing how to yield and bend, they can hold their lives in their hands and survive under any condition. Transforming misfortune into fortune, they are free from the bonds of gain and loss. Their integrity cannot be shaken by force or threats of violence. If you follow the path of right action, you will not be afraid of death. If you understand non-action, you will be free from anxiety. And if you are without anxiety, you can embrace the world with an open heart. Listen to the advice of the enlightened ones, for they teach you the meaning of right action. Use gratitude as your guide, and you will have enough to live in the world. Cultivating contentment. Desire for wealth and power is natural for most people. However, this makes their bodies sick. The sage, however, is content to eat enough to circulate energy and wear enough to keep warm. She does not indulge in emotions or accumulate possessions. Because her eyes are pure, she does not desire to see. Because her ears are still, she does not want to hear. She closes her mouth and refrains from talking. She quiets her mind and refrains from thinking. Abandoning sharp intelligence to return to oneness, she rests her spirit and lets go of knowledge. Thus there is nothing for her to love or hate. Having penetrated the mystery of everything, she dispenses with worry and anxiety. Because she is rooted in the source, there is nothing that she cannot do. Those who know how to live harmoniously are not attracted by gain and reward. Those who have broken the barrier between the internal and the external will not be tempted by power. The sages respect the macrocosm of the universe and value the microcosm of the body. Knowing the great value of life, they can go anywhere without hindrance. Cultivating simplicity. The ancient sages knew how to regulate thoughts and emotions, tame the will and intentions, cultivate inner harmony, and live simply. If you delight in the Tao, you will forget social gains. Cultivate virtue, and you will forget desire. Minimize desire, and you will not be distracted by pleasure or be affected by happiness and sadness. If you are moody and sentimental, however, you will lose your virtue. If you are liberal with emotional outbursts, you will find it hard to be harmonious. Know how to tame your intentions and live in moderation, and you will be an example to humanity. Eat only what is necessary. Wear only what is sufficient. Live simply and travel modestly. Do not be extreme in your actions. Do not desire to have all the things in the world. Do not harm others to benefit yourself. Why let the concerns of riches and poverty, gain and loss, ruin your physical health and mental well-being? Know this, and you will understand the Tao. Cultivating clarity. Humanity owes its existence to the Tao. The ears and the eyes attend to sounds and sights, the nose discriminates the fragrant from the pungent, and the skin senses the difference between heat and cold. The difference between a sage and a mundane person is in the rise and fall of the individual's feelings and emotions. The spirit is the source of knowing. When the spirit is clear, we know intuitively. When we understand the difference between the private and the public, we are at peace with ourselves. Human consciousness is like a river. Just as clear water is still, intention is still when the spirit is clear. If the spirit is clear, attachments to things in the world do not arise. Strong intentions disturb clarity. Only those whose consciousness is clear will not be affected by worldly concerns and material gains. Only those whose spirit is clear will not be bothered by desires and will be able to sleep peacefully. If our consciousness is directed outward to things, the spirit will follow. However, if it is empty of desire, attachments will dissolve naturally. This is the way of the sage. Therefore, if you want to help others, you must tame your emotions first. The sage does not let his emotions run wild. He eats only enough to fill his belly and wears only enough to keep warm. Content to live simply, he has no desires. To possess the world, you must not wish to possess anything. To be respected, you must not be concerned about being famous. Be honest with yourself and exercise virtue and integrity. If the spirit is clear and there are no desires and attachments, you will not be bothered by anything. Gain and loss will have no effect on you. Sights and sounds will not distract you. Arguments will not convince you, opinions will not sway you, and force will not frighten you. This is the way of the sage. That which gives birth to life does not die, and that which dissolves things does not disintegrate. That which rules heaven and earth, which gives light to the sun and the moon, which affects the cycles of change, and which gives birth to rocks and metals, does not favor anything in particular. The sage knows all this, and therefore does not waver in cultivation. With stillness comes non-attachment. This is why in stillness we can cultivate life. Harmony, friendliness, and lack of self-interest can help you to be virtuous. When the events of the world do not distract you, you will be at peace. When there is stillness within, you will be content with your place in the world. In contentment, you can cultivate health and longevity and hold on to virtue all your life. If you do not attain stillness, however, then the circulation of blood will be blocked, the internal organs will not be able to store energy, and you will be plagued with anxiety and worry. Anxious about social gains and loss, you will tire both body and spirit. Today, many are concerned with worldly matters. Some complain about their troubles. Others bemoan the fact that they cannot escape from misfortune. Those who see only the end of autumn will not hear the sound of thunder. Those who hear only the jingle of gold will fail to see the grandeur of the mountains. If you are too attached to little things, you will miss the important ones. Things in the world can distract our minds and arouse our emotions. Generative energy dissipates when there are desires. In a clear pool, mud settles at the bottom. However, it takes only a small ripple to churn up the mud and destroy the stillness. Consciousness is like a pool of water. It is easy to be stirred up by events in the world, but it is difficult to be clear and still. The way of heaven is the sacred way. Below it is the way of scholars, and at the bottom is the way of politicians. If politicians rule, the natural way is in danger. If scholars rule, we will see the beginning of trouble. If the way of heaven rules, the principles of stillness and emptiness will be followed. In emptiness, everything will be taken care of, and in stillness, nothing will be left out. Know the way of emptiness and stillness, and you will understand the beginning and the end of all things. The enlightened person sees stillness as order and movement as chaos. If things are left alone, everything will run its course. In the absence of fear, threat, and force, all things will function naturally. This is the way of heaven. Cultivating humility. Rulers view their country as theirs to own, and they are proud of their possessions. The powerful ones use their armies to conquer. The weaker ones are forced to submit. Display of wealth and power is the norm for most people. However, just as the fierce storms of summer are short-lived, so are political power and armed force. Understanding this, the sage lives in accordance with the Tao, abides in non-action, and keeps her energy in harmony and balance. She cultivates humility and softness, and abstains from the use of force. She is like the great rivers and seas, silently gathering waters from 100 streams and springs. This is why her wisdom is great, and her virtue is limitless. The sage wins respect through humility, therefore he can become a natural ruler. He values the feminine, therefore he can live forever. He reveres life, therefore he is noble and honorable. He is awed by the powers of nature, therefore he places everything above himself. He understands the meaning of responsibility, therefore he knows that lack of seriousness will not get tasks accomplished. It is natural that the great comes from the small and the many are accumulated from the few. Therefore the sage follows the way of the Tao and acts in humility. She does not despise things that are lowly or incomplete. She values simplicity, holds on to the principle of smallness, and practices non-action. Because she realizes that she is incomplete, she can be virtuous. Because she is yielding, she can adapt to different conditions. Those who are rigid will not last long. Those who are strong will die, and those who are satisfied with themselves will perish. Strong winds and heavy rains do not last because their energy is spent quickly. Small and narrow valleys escape the storms because they are not exposed. Knowing these principles, the sage holds on to the feminine and does not display power and strength. Because he has the softness of the female, he has the strength of the male. He does not crave power and greatness, therefore he will live long. Fullness and emptiness follow each other in the natural world. When fullness reaches its height, waning begins, and when emptiness is attained, waxing begins. The sage maintains harmony and is not proud or greedy. Each day she follows the path of the feminine, making sure that her virtue does not diminish. The mundane person, however, tends to bow to those in power and dismiss those without status. He admires the intelligent and despises the dull-witted. He wants reward and hates punishment. He gravitates toward the socially prestigious and avoids those who are nameless. People who have these tendencies will not attain the Tao. The sage follows the way of heaven. She accomplishes by doing nothing and gathers by not grabbing. She feels the same way as the ordinary person, but follows a different path. That is why she can live long. The sagely rulers of ancient times did not indulge in extremes. They knew that when something reaches its height, it will begin to wane. When it is full, it will begin to diminish. When things reach their greatest strength, they will decay. Just as the sun must set after it reaches the highest point in the sky, and the moon must wane after it becomes full, happiness and excitement must be followed by sadness and boredom. The wise person should therefore hold on to simplicity, the learned person to humility, the strong person to carefulness, the rich person to contentment, and the virtuous person to selflessness. The ancient rulers were respected by all because they followed these principles and did not crave completeness and absolute mastery. If you cannot cultivate humility, you will lose sight of the Tao and fall into decay. Cultivating softness. The sage rests with the yin and rises with the yang. Because he has transcended happiness and sadness, he is content and joyful at all times. His joy comes from the depths of his spirit, although he does not show it externally. Because he is joyful inside, he does not see himself through the eyes of others. He cultivates stillness and clarity because he knows that craving and hating come from thoughts and desires. The sage does not experience excitement, anger, happiness, and pain because he is at one with all things and is beyond truth and falsehood. When people know how to conduct themselves, they will be respected naturally. They won't need money to be wealthy, and they won't need to be forceful to be strong. They will not desire material goods, want fame and fortune, or be concerned with recognition and prestige. When wants and desire are absent, body, spirit, and energy will not fail. The body is the vessel of life. Energy is its root, and spirit is the regulator. If either the body or the spirit loses its function, the other will be injured. If the spirit dominates and becomes the root, the body will crave. If the body tries to lead, the spirit will be harmed. Pride, desire, and fame drain energy. A dominating intelligence injures the spirit, and sexual pleasure destroys the body. If we are blinded by ignorance, we will harm the body, energy, and spirit. With time, illness will take hold of the body, and feebleness will take hold of consciousness. Body, energy, and spirit renew themselves in stillness. If you are irritable, you will lose the three essences of life, generative energy, vital energy, and spirit energy, and become old. The sage therefore cultivates the spirit, harmonizes the energy, and regulates sensations. Rising and falling with the breath of the Tao, she merges with everything. Abiding in stillness, she is not disturbed by events happening around her. Sages have nothing, but possess all. They appear empty, but are filled. They cultivate the internals and are not concerned with the externals. They embrace softness and return to simplicity. They hold on to the spirit and travel the expanse of heaven and earth. Removed from the dust of the world, they live in leisure and freedom. They are attuned to everything but are not attached to anything. True to themselves, they do not compete with the world. They see changes but hold on to the permanent. Their intention is contained within, and they are always in touch with oneness. They understand without reasoning, see without looking, accomplish without doing, distinguish without discriminating, feel without responding, and resort to action only out of necessity. Sages are like a light that does not dazzle, and a scene that is not busy. They model themselves after the Tao and follow what is natural. They abide by that which is empty and use stillness and clarity as their guide. They see life and death as parts of the same cycle, and know that the 10,000 myriad things come from the same origin. They do not waste their energy because they know the importance of preserving the spirit. They hold on to simplicity and sleep without dreams. Their knowledge is hidden and their actions are formless. They do not favor existence or non-existence, life or death. Unhindered by form, they can move freely through different realms like deities and immortals. Sages strengthen the spirit, but do not let it dominate. Because they always dwell in the season of spring, for them there is no difference between day and night. They are at one with the cycle of growth, although their bodies do not feel it and their spirits do not experience it. They use the permanent to tame the impermanent, and their world has no beginning, no end, and no limit. They understand that all changes ultimately return to the formless source, knowing that what is born does not experience birth, and that what changes does not experience change. They live in the simplicity, humility, clarity, and primal oneness of the Tao.